Hello. All right, I think we can just get started. Yeah, so I'll crack right into it. My name is Remy Lebert. I'm part of Parity Technologies, and I'm part of the Solution Engineering Department. And I am here to talk about the Web3 skills gap. And I'm here today with two really amazing panelists. And I'll hand it straight over to first Bianca. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, happy to. Good morning, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the Build Week so far. My name is Bianca Buzea. I'm lead DevRel at Chronicle, the team behind the first Oracle on Ethereum. And also, I'm the founder of DevRel Uni, where we teach people how to get into developer relations.
Stunning. Erin?
Yeah, so I'm Erin. I'm an engineer at Parity Technologies. I also am doing some lecturing at the Polkadot Blockchain Academy coming up soon. And I like being able to take very technical concepts and being able to explain them to people, not necessarily developers, but I think it's very important for prospective developers to understand this stuff on a higher level.
Stunning, thank you. I think we'll start with an open question. So, we're here to talk about the Web3 skills gap. So, how big is it currently? On both your open opinions, what are the current issues that we're facing with this right now?
I would say specifically if we're looking at onboarding Web2 folks, there is a skill gap that we must tackle. And it's not only, most of the cases, it's not only enough to have these people prepared for the specific thing that they might be working on. Let's say, I don't know, a smart contract engineer only about smart contracts, but they need rather a broad understanding about the ecosystem and how all the pieces are coming up together. So definitely there is these skills that needs to be addressed. I think there was a report from Electric Capital from 2023 that was saying that after 1 year, around 50% of developers are dropping out. So there is, I would say, definitely something we can do better as an ecosystem.
Yeah, I think it's multi-layered, right? Because there's a lot of blockchain protocols that are written in languages that may not be as common to find developers for, like Rust or Haskell. And then there's also a lot of specialized languages like Solidity, and there's a lot more languages that are cropping up now as the space matures. And getting people up to speed on something that they might not encounter in a normal sort of software engineering course at all is, I think it's hard to do.
No, definitely. I think something we were going to talk about actually was the Polkadot Fellowship, and specifically how we can retain developers. And this goes for all protocols and ecosystems, and trying to really ensure that we're compensating them well. And I say bringing that pool of knowledgeable devs large, increasing that size, really. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the Polkadot Fellowship is a great example of a way to compensate developers who are in the ecosystem and help them upskill. So for people who aren't familiar, it's an on-chain organization, a collective of Rust developers who are very familiar with the Polkadot protocol. And these developers can move up different levels depending on their familiarity, their contribution, and they are compensated on chain for their work. And I think this is a really good way to do it because it's all decentralized. It's really helping distribute the knowledge, and anyone can come in and start. And I think that's really important, is that anyone from GitHub can just be like, okay, I want to potentially join the fellowship. How do I get started? And there's people that can also help you. Like there's a guide, and you can just work your way up, depending on how much work that you want to do. And I think that's a really good way to get into protocol development.
Yeah, I think it's a good opportunity, especially in this decentralized world that we're trying to push towards, to try and compensate devs fairly. Bianca, I actually want to talk about something similar. So the DevRel Uni. Could you give us a bit of information and background about what it's trying to accomplish?
Sure. So basically, back in 2023, I realized that while for developers there are a lot of avenues, like for people to skill up, there wasn't actually much for people who wanted to get into developer relations. There was like no clear path, no like boot camps, no courses, nothing like that over there. And I was like, okay, I'm doing developer relations. I have like a good network of people doing developer relations as well, and we can actually address this gap in skills and do something. So far we run 6 cohorts. With the 7th upcoming very soon. And yeah, we enable a lot of people to get from 0 to 1 and get into developer relations and further support the ecosystem and onboard at their turn more developers.
Stunning. There's actually something quite similar, I think. Maybe Erin, you could talk about this, which is the PBA. They're very, very similar initiatives, I would say, and very both trying to target those developers and upskill them and bring them into the Web3 world. And I guess you don't really even have to be a developer. There's founders tracks and all sorts of different things. So could you give us a bit of background on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, like there's multiple components here. Like obviously we need to have people that are willing to get the skills as a developer and get into blockchain development. But then we also need people to reach out to those developers. And if they're like very new developers, maybe they don't know how to get started, or they're budding developers and they just need help, or they, like retaining those developers once they start is really, really important. So it's kind of like this whole pipeline, right, of developer relations, developers, and it's like, a circle. But the PBA does help people get completely off the ground with protocol development. And there's also, space for teaching people how to write dApps, regulation concerns, founders who may want to learn how to get started in the ecosystem. So I think you need like a really sort of multifaceted approach. Like you need to hit a lot of different types of personalities, because otherwise, you can't just like spearhead one and have one, because you can't have one without all the others.
Well, that sounds good. It kind of leads me to think that if considering we have to have these sort of like, DevRel Uni, PBA, are traditional colleges and universities doing enough? Like that is the open question here. Are they providing students who have got these degrees fresh out of university with actual knowledge to get into like a blockchain or the ecosystem and actually start developing?
I think it really depends on the universities and colleges. I can probably speak a bit about Europe and Germany since I'm based there. I know there are like several programs and universities who have been incorporating for a couple of years now already information and courses about blockchain. So I think that's definitely a good trajectory. But I think what is happening and is more effective, it's at the level of different clubs, different university clubs, and I've seen this quite a lot and quite in a global approach, if you want, where all these clubs are collaborating very closely with different protocols, different hackathons, and bringing new talent.
Yeah, I mean, my university experience was not preparatory for my job at all. And I think that a lot of these sort of like, especially in America, these older colleges, universities that have more classical computer science educations, like they may not even have much to do with software engineering as well, because it's more of a conceptual degree. I mean, obviously there's software engineering degrees as well and electives and things like that. But I do remember one time I brought up IPFS to one of my professors as a possible research subject, because this was back maybe 10 years ago or so. And he was like, oh, well, no, we should do something with like AWS Lambda instead. And he's like a distributed computing professor, so I thought he would find it interesting. But I think there's a lot of progress to be made in academia to make academics more consider, at least starting to look at some of these new things as something interesting that they can actually look into in research, rather than just like, oh, well, it's new, so it's not been around for 50 years, so we're not interested in it, kind of thing.
How do we begin to do that? I think there's a few initiatives that people are trying to do, like, for example, the EZA guys, shout out to those guys. But they're trying to bridge that gap by also working with higher education initiatives. And same with like the Jam Tour that's currently going on. Do you want to talk about that a bit, or?
Yeah, so the Jam Tour is going around to different universities throughout the world in Asia right now. And it's Gavin Wood is speaking about the new Jam protocol and the gray paper. And that's one way to get students interested in this sort of thing. But again, I think there needs to be more focus on the acceptance of these protocols into the research world, the academic world. We're seeing a bit more of it, and I think that's good. I think it just may take time. But definitely going around to different universities and just talking about your stuff, getting people interested in it, because I think a lot of people just don't even know what's out there.
100%. Bianca, is DevRel Uni working with any like third-party programs or initiatives with higher education initiatives as well?
Not specifically universities per se, but again with different clubs from universities so far and protocols. So yeah, that's been like the two avenues so far.
No, sounds good. Do you think there's a fear from universities trying to adopt blockchain culture in a way?
I mean, I think there's still a lot of PR to be done because people who may not know about the intricacies of it and what's actually happening here may have a bad perception of it or, at best neutral perception, where they might not find it interesting, they might not consider it a field that they can go into. And I think getting people just that first step is possibly the most important because people may not even think about something that they could even do. Because people are like, oh, well, I want to grow up and be a software engineer and work at Amazon or whatever. But there's other paths you can take that are very interesting fields, and letting people know that as early as possible is probably the most important, I would say. But then obviously retaining developers as well. Like once they've taken that first step, we need to be kind to them and we need to support them along the way.
Bianca, do you have any?
I think we're actually a bit more flexible as an ecosystem when it comes to like formal certifications, and I think proof of work, if you want, like portfolios I'm referring to here, are way more important in our industry. And I've seen actually quite young talent that was able to advance their career and enter the ecosystem just by like building and showcasing basically what they're doing, building in public. And I've seen a couple of examples when people quite young, they were able to get into the ecosystem. So I think versus the traditional Web2 path, we are a bit more flexible and we value more the skills themselves than some sort of paper or name on a piece of paper.
No, sounds good. Do you think it's possible to try and onboard the Web2 developers in any sense? To try and bridge them over? How hard do you think it is to try and bring them into the Web3 world?
I don't think it's hard once they genuinely, like they want to onboard, because I think we have like different mechanisms. We have like a lot of hackathons where you have a lot of initiatives who support developers. But again, like as you were mentioning, people need to be aware about those initiatives. I remember back in the days when I was looking to onboard myself, but I mean, back then there weren't like as many as we have now. But I think for someone who's outside the ecosystem, it might be a bit more challenging to discover those opportunities.
Yeah, I think people just need to be handheld a little bit at the beginning. And it's hard to do this, right? Because you don't want a protocol going to an institution or doing outreach or whatever to look like a shill. You want it to look legitimate, like it's a legitimate route of a legitimate career route, which it is. And I think, like I said earlier, like people just may have this wrong perception or whatever. But it's hard, I think, to make Web 2 developers understand why going into Web 3 may be interesting for them, and the value proposition for them career-wise may not be evident or obvious. So I think, and because it's easy to stay with what you know, right? It's like this very comfortable paradigm. So I would argue that in order to do this, one of the best ways to do it is, developer relations, and also having really good tooling that is very familiar to them, that feels like Web 2 tooling, that they can pick up, they can experiment with, and they can just kind of take off, because good developers, all like learning on their own, I think, to some degree. And if you have interesting and engaging enough tooling that's easy to use, that can really draw people in.
100%. I think that ties quite heavily into DevX as well, and ensuring just generally when a developer comes to an ecosystem, the entire developer experience is as simple, especially with the users as well. UX and DevX go hand in hand. What would you guys say about that? Specifically asking about how DevX, ties into the whole situation with DevRel and DevX working together.
Yeah, so if you're coming from the Web 2 ecosystem, I think there is a bit of accommodation, let's say, that you need to get used to, and you need to learn, like, okay, what I should do, and to get over your fears. I think, especially for new people, they are like, okay, if I'm doing this wrong, like, it's all on me. And a lot of the times, this fear of something might be going wrong might hold them back. So I think we can do better efforts into educating people on, okay, how to onboard properly, how to do it, how to test, what mechanisms are out there to kind of make sure that the step you're about to take won't have any bad consequences. And I think all this can be solved with better education.
Yeah, I think developer experience is kind of like user experience in Web3, right? It's hard. It's hard, and it's improving every year. And I mean, I've been in blockchain for a very long time now, and in the past 3 years, like, things have gotten much better. But we still have a long way to go to really make that development experience really good for people, especially with so many different players in the industry, and each one having their own separate tooling, and each might work slightly differently, each protocol having its own quirks, or its account model, or whatever you want to, anything. Like, it's like learning new paradigms a lot of the time. And I mean, this is why the EVM is so huge, right? Because it's everywhere. And so people usually start with the EVM because it's ubiquitous at this point. But like, with all of these, new chains and new VMs and stuff like that, I worry that the tooling may become more fragmented, and as a result suffer, and developer experience will then suffer. So it would be nice to see some standards across the industry in terms of tooling and like how to work with developers, especially like Web 2 developers that are new to Web 3. But I know that's a very hard to ask.
I think we have time for maybe one last quick question. So in both your opinions, what would be your both immediate next steps to try and curve that developer relations gap, or the Web3 skills gap?
I would say that we definitely need to get more of this stuff into curriculums, and I mean in maybe a generic way, and make it interesting for people. Like, make it obvious what is in it for them, and not just about monetary. There's a lot of very interesting research going on in the Web3 and blockchain fields, and obviously cryptography is a huge one. And there's all sorts of stuff happening all the time, and I think it's about getting these people excited, getting them engaged in the first place, and then having all of the stuff in place to keep them engaged and make sure they know what the path is, because if the path is not clear, they won't take it.
Bianca?
I would say probably better continuity between different initiatives. Like we have hackathon programs, we have grants, we have like different initiatives we've been discussing, kind of having better shaping this journey of taking developer from 0 to 1 and having a better continuation between all these initiatives to kind of retain the talent over time and to enable them to find the opportunity in the space.
Amazing.
That's as a founder or joining a protocol.
Stunning, thank you. I think we've got to end it here, but huge thank you to our panelists, Erin and Bianca, and thank you to the team for organizing. Yeah, I think this is it. Thank you, guys.